Symposium with Ash Aulak.
Hi guys, welcome to Top Podcast with Kids from the Symposium. I'm delighted as usual to be joined by the boys, Lawrence, Calvin and Arjun, and today by one of my other very good friends, Boti, who's actually joined us to talk about La Liga in today's episode, but might be a future kind of semi-regular on future pods to talk more widely about the game. Before we start, I just want to let you know that we managed to get our pod onto Spotify, and along with YouTube and Anchor, we now have a variety of platforms that you can listen to us on. So we urge you to follow the link in our Instagram bio, the Symposium Podcast, and have a listen to us on Spotify. The link to the YouTube is in the Spotify bio, and yeah, also if you just search for the Symposium or You Can't Podcast with Kids on YouTube, will come up there. So yeah, if you'd like to follow us on YouTube or subscribe to us on YouTube, that would be most appreciated as well. And yeah, we hope you enjoy this episode of You Can't Podcast with Kids. So boys, how have you been? Lawrence, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm quite good. Slightly disappointed because I've waited 3 months for Test cricket to return, right. And then the whole day basically got rained out. So yeah, that's a shame. But otherwise, all good.
Arj, how are you, mate?
Yeah, not bad. Same with Lawrence. I was looking forward to the cricket today. I only watched about 5 overs of it, but I've had quite a productive day otherwise. Cleaning my room out, that's always a good thing.
That's solid.
But yeah, in good spirits.
Cal, how are you? We know you're quite busy, so thank you for joining us.
Yeah. I managed to catch some of the Tottenham game yesterday. Good to always get 3 points. I would say that was an ugly victory. So
sometimes those are a classic Mourinho Italian special, you know. And Boti, how are you, mate?
Well, it's all going well, apart from La Liga, to be honest, for Barcelona. It started off very well. I was very excited about football restarting, and I thought after the first game, wow, Barca's playing excellent. We throw in a couple of draws, and now the match later tonight as well. I'm not so much looking forward to it just because La Liga seems to have slipped away from us. But then again, Champions League is coming soon. So I guess there's something to look forward to still.
So yeah, that leads us nicely into kind of our first section, directed to any of you. What do you think of the most recent game week of games? Boti, chip in with La Liga game week if you want. And what are your kind of predictions for some of the upcoming games? Lawrence, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. Well, for me, this sort of match week wasn't as interesting as the previous ones. There were a few like good games. I'd say Chelsea Crystal Palace was quite a banger.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chelsea getting an important 3 points despite some questionable defending and a ridiculous shot from Wilfried Zaha.
Yeah.
But the highlight of the last couple of days has to be the Tottenham Everton game and Heung-min Son and Lloris getting in the clash. I mean, did I say that Mourinho is toxic? I mean, like we're having players brawling on the pitch, and then Mourinho calls it beautiful.
Calvin, mate. Calvin, how are you feeling about this? How's the team spirit in your squad?
I think it's fun. It's good to see that they actually care after getting effectively dicked on by Sheffield.
Yeah.
And so I mean, let's be honest. It was Son's fault for not tracking back and them nearly scoring. So he has a right to be angry. Like they're the professional footballers. So they have to do their job.
Yeah, but they're coming off for half time. Like that sort of stuff should be kept in the changing room. You can't. You're a team, and you're meant to show yourself.
Yeah, but the team got there to do it, split up, and at half time they shook hands and whatnot.
That was obviously for the cameras. Like, I mean, I feel like a good manager tells his players to, or make sure that his players don't brawl on the pitch.
They have to have something for the Amazon documentary. So.
Yeah.
I mean, talking about Chelsea, that kind of links nicely to what we were speaking about last week, or last time rather, which is about Chelsea's shocking aerial presence, which I guess was shown by Palace hitting the post with a header in the last minute of the game. I mean, Arjun, that must have been a bit of a nail biter for you, a bit of a cracker for the neutral, but from a Chelsea perspective, that must not have been the most comfortable watch.
Yeah, it was a very nervy finish to the game. I was sitting on the edge of my seat, screaming and shouting at the TV. But those are almost the best sort of victories, the scummy sort of single goal wins, perhaps when you don't deserve them. You come away from them feeling very satisfied because you know you were so close to losing. But yeah, it was a very good game. I was paying particular attention to the to our tactics, and I really enjoyed the way in which Frank's team seems to be sort of developing. I think that his tactics sort of draw upon the teams that he found himself in at Chelsea, with like types of Mourinho's pragmatism there as well. So he clearly favours like a defensive midfielder in the mould of Kante, who is similar to like the types of Makelele or Essien that we used to have.
Yeah.
This player should protect the centre backs, but also have the centre back should have the sort of ideally the mix of tactical intelligence and physical presence. Now, obviously, we've been shocking aerially defending set pieces, but I think you can see that there is a sort of growing ability, particularly in Zuma, to sort of dominate aerially and read the play quite well. In front of this defensive midfielder, which normally is Kante, he likes having two box-to-box midfielders. So similar to himself and Michael Ballack, he has players like Mount and Barkley who play as attacking eights who can push forward and drive the ball towards the attack. And then you have fullbacks who can sort of balance attack and defence across the byline. So you have instead of Ivanovic and Ashley Cole, you now have Azpilicueta or Reece James, and sort of Alonso and Everson as well as backups. And then the players that we've been linked with and or buying, so Ben Chilwell, Kai Havertz, Declan Rice, provide sort of the missing pieces to this tactical puzzle that we find ourselves in. So Chilwell is similar to Cole, Kai Havertz can be compared to Ballack, and Rice can be compared to Terry. But they have important differences there as well. They're quite flexible, but also the negatives of they're quite inexperienced at the top level, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say those are very kind of strong comparisons. And if you don't mind me saying, I would guess perhaps slightly wishful comparisons on your part for, I guess, a team that doesn't exist anymore. But you kind of wish it did. But I guess the comparisons are, well taken. I think we get your kind of point that you're trying to make in terms of a system. I mean, Boti, just to bring you in, how was Barca's latest game, and how did you find their kind of long-term trends? And that we've spoken about Chelsea's weakness against set pieces, or just aerially. Have you noticed anything similar with Barca? And how do you find their latest game?
Well, our very last game against Villarreal was actually a delight to watch. After a lot of draws, a lot of goals conceded, and we still got one when a former Barca player, Paco Alcacer, was heavily involved in the goal we did concede. But the last few games, what it's shown for me is it's made me regain faith in the future of Barcelona, because as you well know, we have an aging squad. People have been doubting La Masia for a couple of years, and things are generally looking a bit gloomy at Barca. But Ansu Fati, Ricky Puig, rising, very young players, very, very talented. The kind of players that grab your eyes, that grab the attention of international football. They're wanted players, and I'm glad we've got them. I'm glad they've come from La Masia. I think it shows that we are actually doing something good. And actually, if we're going to talk about La Masia later, I'd like to bring up a few points about why we suffered with the paradox of success in the last few years. Why people maybe have doubted La Masia, when really I think it's just been because we've had so many great players and a must-win mentality that we haven't given our youth proper opportunities to play. And now we're giving them opportunities, not really because we want to that much, because of our aging squad, and we have so many injuries constantly. They are actually getting brought in now. And I'm not too optimistic about the next 2 or 3 years. I think Real Madrid will have quite a dominant run. But the last game of Barca Villarreal really it brought my faith back that in the long term we will have a solid team growing up.
Thank you. That's actually quite insightful, especially for those who maybe don't watch La Liga as regularly as you do. And I'm sure we'll go into more detail about the dynamics between the El Clasico teams later on in the pod. Lawrence, I guess bring you in here, mate. How are there any matches that stick out to you in upcoming matches that you'd like to predict? You maybe think something interesting is going to happen, or just more generally, do you see trends continuing?
I think the Sheffield United Chelsea game on Saturday does stick out to me, because Sheffield are a team that has been a bit sort of struggling since lockdown, and Chelsea obviously on the rise. I was really interested to ask Arjun about Christian Pulisic, because he scored again against Crystal Palace, and I was just wondering, where has he come from? I know he had injuries, but how's he suddenly come alive in this Chelsea team?
I think he was injured, but he's come back. He's come back since the lockdown, looking much more fit and much more in shape than he has been before. But also he's playing more regularly. So I think Frank saw he tried to sort of blood him in quite slowly. And now he's being given increased game time, and I think he's just growing in confidence each time he gets a goal. Each time he gets a goal, he's growing in confidence. But I've been quite astounded and taken aback by how good he's been. You could make an argument. It's not my viewpoint, but you could make an argument, a valid argument, that since the restart he's been the best player in the league. I'd perhaps put Kevin De Bruyne in front of him, but certainly in the sort of top 5 players in the league in terms of shining stars. But I'm very excited every time I watch him play. I was saying, I think to Ash last night, that I'm very impressed by how direct he is. He sort of runs at the defenders rather than sort of shimmying around, maybe passing it backwards, going laterally. He runs towards the goal, he runs towards the defenders, and sort of instills a fear factor in them that you may perhaps not get with the likes of Willian.
I just like to add, I think that was, we spoke about yesterday, and just I think it's something really refreshing that you often don't see that much in the modern game. Just someone who's quite fearless and willing to just run at people and perhaps lose the ball in the process, but at the same time, a couple of times a game, pull off something that's quite beautiful to watch and just back themselves to run at people. I think Sancho has a similar ability. I'm sure Lawrence will be delighted to hear me say that. And I completely echo Arjun's praise of Pulisic. Arjun, I guess I extend the question to you kind of more broadly. Are there other games that stick out to you upcoming that you think are interesting?
I'll have to check the fixture list. I guess tomorrow night, Villa against United is quite a big one. Both in terms of the relegation battle and in terms of the top 4 race. Villa desperately need points, especially after Watford won last night. I think they're 4 points off the pace now in terms of safety. And also United looking to close the gap to Leicester and Chelsea. I see. I'm sure Lawrence will agree, but I see United coming away with the win there quite easily. And in terms of this weekend, obviously the Sheffield United-Chelsea game sticks out, as does the midday kickoff, Watford against Newcastle. Again, Watford with that win against Norwich, sort of squeaking above the relegation zone. They should be aiming for another 3 points there.
Boaty, just talking about Villa, actually, I'd just like to bring you in because you're like a reasonable fan of Grealish, and you've seen, and you showed me stats the other day actually that he's created quite a few chances. He divides opinion, but overall, what's your assessment of him as a player?
Well, why I first started admiring Grealish, or maybe admiring's a strong word, but why I first thought he was not just a good player, but really a great player is his charisma. He's got charisma on the field, and maybe the way you were saying about Pulisic earlier, that he is willing to go at players. He's willing to take the foul, draw the foul. He goes for those through balls that aren't so much attempted in many of those close passing teams anymore. He really brings charisma to what is quite frankly a weak Aston Villa, and I think he's got a future. I don't know if he'll be staying at Villa. It really depends on what they can pull out of the hat in these last few games. But I can't quite understand who would be so opposed to saying that Grealish is in fact a great player, or unless any of you have any other opinions.
Do any of you want to come in on that? Because he does divide opinion despite the chances he creates. I
think you've got to give Grealish quite a lot of praise, to be fair. So, because he was in the Aston Villa side that first got relegated back in, I think, 2017, I think, 2017. And I think he had the opportunity to move away, but his loyalty to Villa meant that he stayed at the club for in the Championship, and I think his development has really come on since then, because even back in 2017 he was seen as a very important playmaker, but now he's really developed into, it's basically a one-man club at this point in my opinion. I think a lot of the criticism around Grealish is that because he hasn't moved to a top 6 club, he hasn't in a sense, proven himself on a bigger stage. And I mean, he's not old, but he's like 24 now. The question is whether clubs still kind of want to take that gamble on him.
Yeah, and you don't want him to become a sort of Wilfried Zaha type figure. I mean, obviously Zaha had that big move early in his career to Manchester United, which didn't quite work out, but there have been constant rumours of Zaha leaving every transfer window for pretty much the last 2 to 3 years, and he's stayed at Palace, and now the sort of rumours are dissipating slowly. You've got to think that Grealish has to move for the sake of his career, especially if Villa get relegated. And the rumours of him going to a club like United or Spurs are quite interesting. I personally can see him going to Spurs. I was wondering what Calvin had to say on that.
Yeah, Calvin, because he's been linked strongly with Spurs. Whether Spurs will actually spend the money is obviously another matter entirely. But if he does come, where do you think he'll fit in? Do you think he'll be a success?
Okay, yeah. So we've been linked with him in the past. I think if we're going to do it, we would have done it back then because he's only increased in value now.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's ever going to happen. But if he was, he'd be a squad player. Wouldn't be a starter, I don't think.
Really, that's quite surprising. So who do you think would keep him out the starting 11?
Lo Celso. If he's playing in that more advanced role, we've seen what he can do, and he's younger.
Yeah.
So I don't see how he'd fit in if it wasn't for that.
I can see him moving to like a Leicester or Wolves. I don't think he's necessarily proven himself enough for the bigger teams, and I do put Tottenham in that bracket for them to take a gamble on him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know that's fair enough because, as we say, he is quite divisive. I mean, it was interesting when we did the pod a couple of times ago. We did our starting England 11s, and it was interesting to see whether he fitted in any of yours. From memory, I don't think he fitted in anyone's starting 11. But would you take him to the World Cup, Boaty?
I've got to say yes.
Okay.
You mean Euros, right? Euros.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say World Cup so far ahead.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah, to the Euros next year, postponed Euros. I mean, Boaty, you said yes. Is it just because of his ability, even coming off the bench? You said charisma. I guess that might be valuable in a travelling squad.
Yeah, those players that can come in the 60th minute and really infuse the team with energy in the midfield are so vital, especially for a team like England. I think sometimes you just need that kick to get it all moving. Yeah. I think Grealish can do that. If not at the start of the game, then certainly a 60th minute sub he's an ideal player for that.
No, I don't think that's that controversial. I mean, Arjun, Lawrence, where would you come in on this?
The issue is that England have so many players in that exact position. They have Maddison, Mount, Ali, and Foden, obviously. So, I mean, maybe he gets into the squad, but there are so many players above him in the pecking order. I'm not sure whether he plays that much, even if he does go with the squad.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, Boaty, are there any? Would you like to preview Barcelona's next upcoming game in La Liga?
Oh, it's about 2 hours away, I believe.
Okay. Espanyol, right?
That's it. It's Espanyol.
To relegate your rivals.
How do you feel that's going to shape up? How's that shaping up then? How do you think your Barca perform? And tactically, is it an interesting matchup?
Well, there's not much excitement to it, unfortunately. Espanyol are kind of weak. They'll put up a fight against us because, well, they hate us, quite frankly. It's how derbies are. Probably be a lot of yellow cards as normal, as there is in the Barcelona derby. I don't know. I think at this point, morale's not broken at Barca, but it's not the strongest. We're just kind of hoping that maybe Madrid will falter somewhere. It's not seeming likely. I mean, Ramos is really leading them extraordinarily well. I really don't like him, but I do have to say he's an excellent player, and he really is carrying Madrid.
After the Kiev Champions League final, I can assure you that I'm not his biggest fan either. But I guess this brings us nicely onto our next topic in the pod, which is kind of more focused on La Liga. So, Lawrence, I know you had some stuff to say.
It was more of a question mark again. Sorry, over Barcelona. I kind of wanted to press Boaty, I guess, on Antoine Griezmann because I know he scored and looked good over against Villarreal in the last match, but I read some ridiculous reports earlier in the season that Messi just wasn't passing to Griezmann on the pitch, and for a player that was seen as top 5, top 10 in the world, moving to such a big club, what's gone wrong?
No, it's It's interesting you say that about passing to Messi because there was a huge media outburst of this maybe about a week and a half ago. In the game after, obviously, Messi must have passed the ball to him about 20 times at least. So I'm not sure if that had anything to do with it. But Antoine Griezmann as a whole, I think it's best if we start at the beginning or even before he went to Barca. So in my personal opinion, I never imagined Griezmann at Barca. I wouldn't have picked him. I don't think he matches our style. I think he was really an ideal striker for Atletico, where it's all about counter-attacks. You get one chance to slot it away. But he's had trouble, as many players do, fitting in with the Barca style of play, where you're making endless runs 95% of the time. You're not getting the through ball because it's going backwards rather than forwards, working it around. I have to hand it to Griezmann. He always puts the effort in. He does run. He works his way back in defense, which is nice to see because it doesn't often happen from Messi, and it can sometimes be very irritating. I think he's struggled because he's not getting those fast counter-attack chances, which Suarez at Liverpool was also. It was Ashwin. I don't know if you might want to correct me on this, but I think that was Suarez's strongest point in the old Liverpool squad.
Yeah.
Running onto the counter-attack, slotting them away.
Yeah.
It took Suarez a bit of time to adjust, and he absolutely did. Griezmann, he doesn't have that same big forward, maybe classical number 9, you might say, Suarez does.
But is that because he's being slightly played out of position in that? Is he more of a number 10 or even a CAM, just a cam, just someone who can kind of play off the big forward and collect second balls and just run at people rather than, a bulldozing strong number 9 like Suarez?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we have to make this clear as well. I mean, Griezmann, by the numbers, is not performing badly at all. He scored 15 goals, I think, and a number of assists, which is, I think, about where he was with Atletico Madrid. It's just in Atletico Madrid, you win your games 1-0 or 2-1, and that one goal is enough to take 3 points away. The problem with Barca is that we do concede a lot of goals, and you're next to Messi, Suarez, and numerous other players behind them who can all and do all get that ball and shoot it rather than passing it down to the left winger. And I think Griezmann hasn't been given as much time either. He's been benched sometimes even for Ansu Fati. Sometimes it seems that the manager, both Valverde and Quique Setien, lost a bit of faith in him and benched him for 2 or 3 games in a row. I admittedly didn't watch Griezmann that much in the past, so I don't know if he's a mood-dependent player where if he's feeling good, he plays well. I'm not sure if that's the case. If it is, then I hope this goal against Villarreal might boost his morale. He might get going, maybe in time for the Champions League.
Arjun, Arjun, just bring you in then. So you've spoken a lot about kind of the puzzling transfer strategy of Barca and perhaps their long-term weird trajectory. Could you talk a bit about that and then maybe direct a question to Boti, perhaps if there's something you want to clarify?
Yeah, so going back to the point earlier about La Masia, I just find I think it's valid, the fact that Barcelona aren't relying so much on the academy, in that you had a golden generation, right, of players who were being brought through the academy. Mm-hmm. So you had Busquets, Piqué, Puyol, Iniesta, etc., and obviously Messi going back to 2003. So it's inevitable that there will be a sort of dearth. But I think what must be discouraging for the Barcelona youngsters is when you have an injury crisis at the club. You're waiting for your opportunity to make the bench a few times, but then your club brings in Martin Braithwaite for like 20 million, just a completely nonsensical signing that doesn't really make any sense. On paper, I can't say. I mean, has he performed? I doubt it. And that's how players get their chances, is by youngsters getting minutes due to injury crisis. But then when you sign players like that, it must be a bit discouraging.
No, I think that's absolutely right, and it's kind of been the pressure. I think this has been a result of the pressure on the managers at Barcelona. What you've seen is Luis Enrique made a few substitutes in the 80th minute, brought on some youngsters, and Barcelona concede a goal, maybe end up drawing the match as a result of it. And this happened quite a few times. and then it happened again with Valverde, and now it happened with Setien, and it's this must-win. It's kind of toxic must-win mentality at Barca, where you have to win at least 2 trophies a year. You can't lose a single match in the league. It really means that managers aren't willing to gamble those 3 substitutes they have. Most of the time we make 1 or at the most 2 substitutes, and only when we're 2 goals up, just because the managers are so scared of being axed so quickly. Which I don't want to comment on the politics of the club, but
does that culture of fear, if I could just butt in quickly, prevent the long-term growth or improvement of the club, because managers can't make difficult decisions, can't feel like they're being backed, and then perhaps renew and suffer short-term bad results to get long-term better results?
Yeah, I mean, if you turn the question into a statement, then it's absolutely right. Again, I think, and going back to the original point of bringing in, just to name a few of these really quite, well, interesting is a weak word, maybe perhaps ridiculous would be a better word for it, transfers of Paulinho, Andre Gomez, Paco Alcacer, Braithwaite the latest, where you just think, you had all those players like Rafinha or Denis Suarez, or even Sergio Roberto, who still is really a rotation member of the squad, and I mean he's getting on a bit now. You've had all these talents waiting in line, and now Barca just can't do anything with them. We're loading them off to teams like Celta Vigo. It really is a shame to watch. And
you have Cucurella at Getafe.
I think he's an excellent player too. I mean, you see the amount of work he puts in. But I really hope, and I think this is actually happening as well. Now I think this strange period is coming to an end where we are. I think you used the word the other day, but we are. It looks like going to have a culling of the older generation.
Yeah.
Sooner rather than later, perhaps in the next 2 years. You've got all these 33-year-olds.
Right. But
I think they're going to go, and we will inevitably bring in the youth, and I have my faith in them at the moment.
Arjun?
So 2 points. So firstly, just to correct myself, I said earlier like the Masia haven't been producing world-class players, but then again, just off the top of my head, there are quite a few players that have come through La Masia and have been sold elsewhere. So you've got players like Adama Traore, Icardi, Daniel Olmo, I think, who's now doing well at Leipzig, Hector Bellerin, Onana, the Ajax goalkeeper. So you have all these players who may not necessarily be world-class right now, but they can still prove to be useful squad options and rotation options, but aren't really getting their chance. So that's quite disappointing, I guess, from the standpoint of a neutral who wants to see young players come through at different clubs and play for the clubs they've developed through. And secondly, you express your sort of optimism about Barcelona playing the youth, but then again, last week, the quite frankly puzzling decision to swap Artur for Miralem Pjanic, which doesn't really make any sense on paper, yet from a financial standpoint, may do. So I just want to know your perspective on that.
So obviously your first point first. I mean, you're right again, and what's a shame to see, if you look at the statistics that come out of La Masia, what you see is the squad sizes vastly increasing, and Barcelona's hanging on to a lot of talent and not giving them time to play, all the way from the Juvenil A, B teams and the Barca B squad. They're inflating to 26 plus in numbers, and really I'd like to see some of these players loaned out to actually develop, get playing time, and that's not been happening. Now that we've got Patrick Kluivert running things, I hope that improves. I can't really say much more on this. I guess we'll have to wait and see if Barca can turn this around. So on the second point, I have to say, I think Ash knows this well from probably my shouting in the kitchen, maybe punching the wall, which is his bedroom wall. I was never a fan of Arthur. Maybe the first game I saw him, I thought, wow, maybe this is the new Xavi. I was wrong. There's not going to be another Xavi. It was really bad on my part. It's kind of the wishful thinking we see with Chelsea. But my problem with Arthur is I don't like him paired with Frankie de Jong. I like one of them on the field at one point, because if there's two of them, we just don't seem to move forwards. We get bogged down in the middle, and it's an endless game of let's spin around and see where the ball goes, and it's back at my feet again, so let's go back to the keeper again. And it's dangerous. He's not quite Busquets, and he can hang on to the ball. So when he spins around like this, he does lose the ball often. So I was never a huge fan. I kind of tolerated him when Frankie de Jong wasn't on the field, but when they were both on the field, I couldn't stand it. And I think Frankie is better to put faith in. Now, as for Pjanic, I mean, he's a good player. I've never once woken up and gone, wow, wouldn't it be great if we got Pjanic in Barca's midfield? I'm curious to see what he'll do, but I think it's really a finesse of the financial fair play system, and I think it is a fair opinion to say that it is a bit of a scandal. There's not much more I can add to this, but hey, if it's a loophole, Ash, as a lawyer, I think you'll say it's good work from the Barca's counsel.
Honestly, I have to commend them on that regard at least. I mean, I guess the question to Lawrence, Arjun, Calvin, any of you would be: is this a kind of good time, or even both of you can respond as well? Is this a good time for Barca to be going through this? And that Real Madrid are having their own issues with Hazard. Atletico are kind of trundling on, but you wouldn't say that they're perhaps world beaters, although they're good at beating anyone on their day. As
they did beat the best team in the world, didn't they?
Yeah, honestly, as I said, they're good at beating anyone on their day, and they're very good in kind of tournament football. And they're the kind of team that you love if you support them and hate if you don't. But is this kind of a good time for Barca to be going through this just because of the Hazard issues? And Real Madrid is certainly not the unit they were when they were under Zidane in the first round of Champions League, successive Champions Leagues. So I guess the question would be to Lawrence. How do you think Real are able to respond to this? And do you think that Barca have actually found it quite fortunate to be going through a rough period at this time?
See, this is the thing. I was gonna ask, but I'll just sort of talk about it. Like, I think that this sort of crisis that Barca are in, with like rumors of Messi exiting the club, probably won't happen. But it doesn't help to have this speculation, transfer problems that we've just outlined. I think it hurts more that Barcelona won't win the La Liga this season, given the fact that Real Madrid had their mini crisis earlier. Sacking Lopetegui and then Solari and then having to bring back Zidane. And then Real Madrid have turned into this sort of winning machine since Zidane has took over in March. And the fact that Madrid are clear at the top of the table and certainly look like they're going to win the Liga, I think it hurts more for Barcelona. Given that all of the problems that Real Madrid have had, not just with their manager, but with, as you said, Hazard. But players like Courtois, Ramos, players who are sort of kind of written off, are suddenly coming back to form under Zidane. So I think it's far from, it's okay that Barca are going through a crisis because Atletico are struggling, but Real Madrid are struggling. No, I think it's worse because Real Madrid had their struggles and they look like they're going to win the La Liga at a canter.
Yeah, and you mentioned the problems with Hazard. I think that's quite harsh. I think he's had recurring injury issues, but I wouldn't say he's struggled in terms of like being labelled a flop or anything. I think he's just been desperately unlucky with injuries. I think yesterday as well, he suffered like a reoccurrence of an injury, and he'll be out for a couple of more games. So, I mean, that's unfortunate. But the thing with Real Madrid is, obviously, I can't vouch for them entirely. I don't watch every single game of theirs, but this season, I think since Ronaldo was sold, there seems to be an emphasis to playing the youth instead of spending big on Galacticos. Okay, you had Luka Jovic being bought for big money, but mostly there have been lots of young players being played, like Rodrigo, Vinicius Jr., and they have really promising youngsters out on loan. So I think the Ukrainian goalkeeper Lunin might be at Valladolid, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but also the Japanese player Kubo, who's doing well for Mallorca, and then obviously Odegaard's the sort of eternal hope who was really hyped a lot a few years ago and is now pulling up trees at Sociedad. So there seems to be an emphasis on playing the youth more, which I think contrasts nicely with Barcelona's sort of okay, they have players like Fati and Ricky Puig, but they seem to be spending more, whereas Real Madrid are taking the very un-Real Madrid-like focus on the youngsters, which I think proves an interesting contrast. And then you just have Atletico just sort of trundling along, as you said, grinding out 1-0 wins or 1-1 draws, and sort of just progressing up and staying third place like they always seem to be.
I mean, Boti, how do you perceive Madrid just from a rival's perspective before we move on? And specifically, what are your thoughts on Vinicius?
Well, it's been very frustrating because sometimes when I watch these games, it looks like the opposition team dominate, and then they end up losing 1-0 from a silly penalty that they really shouldn't have given away. But I suppose I have to commend Madrid that they have that consistency. They will themselves through the game. It's very frustrating to watch as a Barcelona fan, especially when you have some beautiful games from Barca, and yet you end up drawing 2-2 with Vigo, who seems to be our bogeyman team. But Vinicius is I think he's extraordinary. It's rare that I really commend a player from Real Madrid, but I think he is absolutely extraordinary. And if he starts consistently scoring goals, he's going to win the Ballon d'Or multiple times. I think he's terrifying. Every single time he gets the ball on the left wing, he beats his man. He takes it in. He either squares it to Benzema, who's annoyingly scoring a lot of goals again, or he can tuck it in himself sometimes. Although not too consistently at the moment, which is fortunate for Barcelona. But if he once does find that consistent ability to put them home, he'll be coming away with 20 plus goals a season, and he really will make Real Madrid a European force to be reckoned with.
Well, on that interesting note, I mean, sorry, Lawrence, carry on.
No, just a word for Benzema, who I think is the most underappreciated striker of the past decade. Like he has 22 goals in all competitions this season. He's been scoring like that consistently ever since he signed, 10, 11 years ago. And he's always seemed to be overshadowed by Ronaldo or Bale, even Vinicius. He never gets the hype, but I think he's a fantastic striker and quite impressive longevity.
Not just goals as well, he's an excellent playmaker. He contributes so many assists to the team. He's just a very good footballer overall, even when he's not scoring.
That backheel pass a few match days ago as well, it was beautiful. Sadly, again.
Well, I guess thanks for that. I mean, because that was interesting, and it bodes interestingly for the future, and just in terms of the trajectories of Madrid and Barca and their different strategies, and that was quite a nice comparison. But I think now we'll move on to our regular section of Where's Calvin?
Hit it. Where's Wiley? Where's Wiley? Did you say him? Where's Wiley?
Where's Wally? Where's Wally?
So this is the section where we have 10 questions to ask Calvin which stadium he's in Europe or in the UK. And so far we haven't failed, but let's see how we go today. Arjun, would you want to go first?
Okay, is this stadium which you were at a stadium in England?
No.
Okay.
Ooh.
I've decided to do some travelling.
Right, okay. Lawrence?
Are they in the La Liga, given that we just talked about them?
No.
Oh.
Ooh. I'll go next. Are they in the top five European leagues other than the Premier League?
What's your?
Are they in Liga, Bundesliga?
Okay,
Serie A?
they are.
In one of those.
Yeah, they're in one of the top. They're in the top league in one of the European, recognised European leagues.
Okay, so that's 3 questions. Boti?
I'm just gonna go through and say, is it in the Bundesliga?
No.
Ooh, okay.
Has this club been in the Champions League in the last decade?
Yes.
Ooh, okay.
He had to think about it, so you know.
Could be a shock qualification.
Lawrence?
Wait, so we've ruled out La Liga, Bundesliga, and Premier League.
Yeah.
So it's either Serie A or Liga. I kind of want to just go for just a rogue guess, to be honest. Sorry about if I'm ruining the game.
No, go on.
But wait, where did Atlanta play? Atlanta.
You can just ask if it's Atalanta because he'll give the club anyway. The club.
No, I'm just googling the stadium name. Is it the Gervais Stadium?
No.
Oh, God's sake!
I purposely waited for him to do it.
Okay. Right. Okay. Is it in Serie A?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So we're 7 questions down, boys, and we've got the league. The league it's in. Right, Boti. it's a Serie A team.
Ooh. Do they have blue on their home kit?
Yes.
Ooh. Okay. Arjun.
So,
is it one of the 7 sisters of Italian football? So these teams are Napoli, Parma, Juve, Milan, Inter, Roma, and Lazio.
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
So which one of those are blue? We've got Lazio's
Napoli.
light blue, Napoli,
Napoli and
Inter.
Lazio.
and Inter Milan as well.
Yeah, Napoli, Inter, and Lazio. Well, we've got 2 questions left. So okay, is it whose turn is it next? Oh, I think it's Lawrence's turn next, isn't it?
No, Ashford, is your turn.
Okay, well, did Diego Maradona play for them?
Let me just check. I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, but I want to check.
Well then, okay.
Well, is it the
Yes.
San Pablo?
Wait.
Oh, actually, hold on a sec. Is my knowledge that bad? Hold a sec.
Carl.
No, the answer's no to that.
So he didn't.
No.
It took a
He
long
only
time.
played for Napoli. And
Yeah,
Inter,
that's
so
what it's
it's
going
not-
to be.
I'm not exactly the Argentinian prodigy, despite Poch.
Right.
Right, so it's Lazio or Inter. So it's like
We've
a
got
50-50.
one more question, boys.
So yeah.
So,
Lawrence, I'll give you the last question. mate.
oh my, look. Okay, let me just work myself into the mind
Don't
of
do
Calvin,
a
right?
Spurs, don't do a Spurs and bottle this. Come on.
Look, San Siro is like too obvious a stadium. Like if you pick that, you're basically a pleb.
So
So
it must
it's
be
got to
San
be
Siro
the
then,
Stadio
surely.
Olimpico.
Is that your guess? Is that your final answer?
Am I
Lawrence, for the boys.
overestimating
For the boys,
Calvin?
Lawrence.
Yeah, Stadio Olimpico. Going for it.
You have got the wrong answer. It was
Oh,
San Siro.
it was a
Yeah, well, we
Oh,
lost, but
God.
we found out that you're a pleb, so
Right.
I'm down.
So, nice.
But then
we've
again,
lost
we already knew that. So
Yeah,
He's-
Lawrence set this up as a nice win-win for the boys.
Yeah. I mean, okay. Right. I mean, Cal, that is such a basic choice. I expected far better of you, but I guess I should lower my expectations of the
I mean, he
future.
did
Well,
win.
it's a classic British travelling play.
Yeah, literally.
Travel to.
British fraud. Okay. I guess thanks for that, Cal. So that's our first loss, boys. Cal finally registered a win. Lawrence, I guess the only thing that we've got left on the pod is to allow you to talk about one of your favourite games ever, and perhaps just us asking questions about it. And yeah, if you'd like to just jump straight into it.
Yeah, well, I am a United fan, as well. We have regular listeners now, don't we? So the regular listeners will know. So I first started getting into football around 2006. So the period between 2006 and 2009 was my first experience of football, and I think it's looked on fondly, that side, as one of the best Ferguson sides. They won in 3 seasons. They won the league 3 times in a row. They won a cheeky League Cup, and the team itself was absolutely fantastic. They had the back 5 of Van der Sar, Evra, Vidic, Ferdinand, Neville. They had Carrick and Scholes in midfield. My mouth is salivating at the thought of this. Rooney, Ronaldo, Tevez up front. It was a fantastic team.
Well,
But I feel like,
what do you mean Pereira wouldn't get into that team?
wow, no.
Sorry, carry on.
No. I mean, he might make the reserves, but no.
Yeah.
But I feel like if that team didn't win the Champions League at least once, which they managed to do in 2008, there'd be a sense that that would detract from the greatness of this team, despite all the players that they have, or at least that there's some sort of missed opportunity there. So the game I chose was the 2008 Champions League final, despite there have been some great United Champions League nights in that era. So 2007 wins against Roma 7-1 and Milan 3-2, as well as the very famous 2009 win away against Arsenal. If you remember, Ronaldo scored one ridiculous free kick goal, and then that was that counter-attacking goal that's sort of seen as the pinnacle of Ferguson. But I chose the Champions League final because I thought it would be a great one to unpack, and I can make fun of Arjun in the process.
Right, that's always good.
Yeah, so before I move on to the match itself, I described how important, winning Champions League was for United, but I was wondering, Arjun, how did Chelsea view this match now, I guess, because whilst they lost to United both domestically and in Europe in 2007, 2008, does that kind of not matter because you did get the redemption in 2012 against Bayern?
Right, so yeah, in hindsight, obviously, it doesn't hit as hard because we did win the big years 4 years later. Personally, as a Chelsea fan, this is one of my earliest memories of watching Chelsea play in the Champions League was this whole Champions League run in 2008 and the final, which I remember sitting inches away from the TV, sitting on the floor, almost crying as Anelka and Terry missed their penalties. I have bad memories associated with this game. But I think what's worth highlighting is how good Chelsea were in Europe in the sort of latter part of the decade. So between 2004 to 2009, we reached at least semi-finals every single Champions League campaign, apart from 2006 when we got knocked out against Barcelona. So that's how many? 5 semi-finals minimum, and obviously one final in 2008. So this team really could have solidified greatness if they'd won during this spell. However, obviously the fact that we won it 4 years later made it really sweet. The fact that we won it despite basically scumming our way through every single round in the knockout stages made it even sweeter. And yeah, I mean, it sort of reduced the horrors of that campaign, I guess. But yeah, I mean, there's a famous sort of like image of the two teams, the two lineups of that day in 2008. And if you just compare the lineups for both teams to say the lineups now or the lineups from a few years ago, it's quite depressing really just how much the teams have stagnated, where you had world-class players in pretty much every position on the pitch.
Onto the lineups. I mean, just for you nostalgia fans, I'll go through them. I mean, Chelsea had, as you said, they had a fantastic team in this era. They played the typical 4-3-3. I think you described earlier in the pod about the trident in midfield of Makelele, Ballack and Lampard, which really anchored the Chelsea midfield, and they were supported so well at the back by Cole, Terry, Carvalho, Cech. But I think the big question mark for Chelsea going into this game was who to play at right back, because you had Paulo Ferreira, Giuliano Belletti, who were like sort of seasoned veterans, very very experienced. But then obviously there was Michael Essien. Yeah, who was seen as a more physical specimen. He was much stronger, and somebody had to deal with Ronaldo, who was playing on the left in this game, as United went with their 4-4-2 with Tevez and Rooney up front. So there was a sort of a question as to how to deal with Ronaldo, and in the end Chelsea chose Essien, which is quite important as we go into the game. So like talking about the match itself, like this was one of my first memories of football as well, and because it was on ITV Sport, and that was the only sort of TV that I watched growing up, my memories of this game are punctured by Clyde Tildesley's legendary commentary. So the first thing that I remember, 26 minutes, United strike first, and guess who? Cristiano Ronaldo. He's on the end of a great cross by Wes Brown, and Essien, who was meant to be marking Ronaldo in that position, sort of was just caught completely off guard. Ronaldo was allowed to give a nearly trademark majestic leap and header into the bottom corner. That was his 42nd goal of the season. It was probably, I'd say it's his best season in a United shirt. And that was a fantastic goal. But, Chelsea did fight their way back into the game. So another Clyde Chelsea goal. It will come for Lampard, and Chelsea are level. Chelsea score a typically scummy goal. Essien's deflected shot finds its way to Lampard. Van der Sar loses his footing, and Lampard scores a lucky open goal.
Lawrence, can I just intervene? Sorry to stop your
sure.
Your beautiful thing, but it's just Sheffield United have scored in the last minute against Wolves, so we'll just see how that ends. That will end 90+3. But yeah, just to let listeners know, and that's just ended. Sheffield United have beaten Wolves 1-0 after scoring in the 90+3rd minute. Obviously important for the race to the top four. But yeah, sorry, carry on.
That's a very important game, yeah. But yeah, so Chelsea equalise, and then if you want to talk about fate, just like the 1999 final, United are saved by the woodwork twice because Lampard hits the post from like 25 yards out. It was an absolutely brilliant shot from him, but Van der Sar completely beaten, but it hits the post, and Lampard hits the underside of the crossbar. And it's just like, Chelsea pretty much on top at this point. United did have chances, like Giggs had his effort cleared off the line by Terry, but I'd say Chelsea had the better of it. But then you have the sort of, as the game nears penalties, Drogba has this moment of madness where he pussy slaps Nemanja Vidic and then gets a red card for his troubles. And I think that sort of sparks off that sort of, like, not injustice that Chelsea felt, but sort of like a missed opportunity that sort of leads to why 2012 was such like a great moment for them. So we get to penalties, and Ronaldo steps up for United's third penalty. It was 2-2 at this point. All penalties have been scored. And then Clyde Chelsea comes in with, as the penalty is taken, and Ronaldo misses, and then Clyde Chelsea goes, the man who has been unable to stop scoring this season stopped halfway through his run-up, and Petr Cech kept him out. I have no idea to this day why Ronaldo did that stupid stutter before his penalties. Like, it really annoyed me whenever he did that, because like keepers who are competent wouldn't sort of commit themselves before the stutter, and Ronaldo would just lose momentum. But anyway, Petr Cech, being a great keeper, stopped the penalty, which gave John Terry the chance to win the Champions League. And as we know, he's missed it. He's missed it. Right. And that was, I remember just in my room jumping for joy at John Terry's slip. And it was just an absolutely fantastic moment for me. And then Anelka takes the most lackadaisical penalty, which is saved comfortably by Van der Sar, and United win the Champions League. And yeah, this was like one of my favorite games growing up, just for the drama and the quality of the match, to be honest. And it really sort of solidified my love for United and my love for the game, and that's why it's such an important game for me.
Wow. If it wasn't for the fact that you were talking about United, I think you would have brought a tear to my and Ash's eyes there.
Mate, that was some quality commentary, and honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that I think United, I absolutely hate them. I think, I'd be welling up there. That was some quality narration from you.
It was just very nice.
Just want to speak about. So you talked about the effects of Chelsea, obviously, and as I said, it made our victory 4 years later even sweeter. I think you can compare it to Liverpool as well. So obviously they lost in hilariously tragic circumstances in Kiev against Real Madrid in 2018. But then the fact
can we have some F's in the chat for that, boys?
Right, yeah. But then the fact that you won a year later made it sweeter, and similarly the Premier League win was perhaps made more, I'll use it again, more sweeter because of the fact that you so narrowly lost against City the season before. So I think there's something to be said for a team losing in tragic circumstances, but then snatching victory again from the jaws of defeat a few years later or the next season. I always find it particularly satisfying.
I definitely think that that's true. Like, I'm still waiting for Tottenham to have their redemption moment after losing that Champions. I think we'll be waiting a while. But yeah, it's definitely
Be
true
in my
that
lifetime.
it's definitely true that even I as a United fan during that 2012 final, I was kind of rooting for Chelsea because it was, well, first it was an English team, and second of all, they had suffered that horrible loss on penalties.
Yeah, and our record in like the decade prior to that final in Europe, we sort of did deserve to have something out of it rather than just 2-loss finals. So I think we did deserve a Champions League during that spell. Obviously, 2012, you can say we didn't deserve it because of how bad we were that season in Europe and and domestically. But I think it came a few years too late. Maybe the wrong players won it. But the fact that we still have a Champions League is quite nice, I think.
Yeah, that whole era was kind of a golden. Like, we haven't seen that kind of domination in the Champions League. Well, we have now, but we hadn't in the years between sort of 2012 and 2019. That sort of English club domination of the Champions League.
I mean, just to go into that in more detail. So if you look at look at 1970s to 80s, 77-78 Liverpool won, 79-80 Nottingham Forest won, 81 Liverpool won, and then again 84 Liverpool won. And that's the only other time that England, other than in this period you're talking about in the noughties, have really kind of dominated Europe. So in 2005, Liverpool got to the final. 2006, Arsenal lost to Barcelona, the Ronaldinho Barcelona. 2007, Liverpool lost to AC Milan in the revenge from Istanbul and Athens. 2008 was this final. 2009, United lost to that amazing Barca team under Guardiola when they won absolutely everything. 2010 was the exception, and then in 2011, United lost again. So that was a really sustained long period of English success, which I think and at least I hope it will be repeated again, given the financial dominance of the Premier League.
And then also like the fact that in the 80s our clubs were banned from Europe, but I think I've read lots of pieces about how teams such as the Everton team could have done insanely well in Europe if they'd been allowed to compete. So you could have had more success then. But yeah, I think just off the top of my head, between 2012 and 2018, you only had 2 clubs getting to the semi-finals. So you had Chelsea in 2014 and then Manchester City in 2016. So I could be wrong. There could be 1 or 2 other exceptions. But yeah, in comparison to the sustained success of the decade previously, it wasn't a good period for English clubs. But now we seem to be reversing that trend.
Well, I guess on that distinctively positive note, as I think we start to, and I hope as we see as a pattern that we're going to end all our podcasts on, I'd like to end there. And I think this was a really good episode. I'm really happy for Boti for joining us, and I'm sure he will again very soon, talking about La Liga in detail, which is not something we often do. Just like to remind you that we are now on Spotify, so you can find us via Instagram, and all the links to our other social medias are on Spotify and also on our YouTube channel. So yeah, please do follow us on Spotify. Please do follow us on Instagram, and yeah, subscribe to us on YouTube, and we'll be sure to bring you more content, not just in football from You Can't Podcast with Kids, but through our other music, film, and travel and food and markets podcasts too. So yeah, we hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you next time on the Symposium and You Can't Podcast with Kids. Cheers. Thanks.
The Symposium with Aulak.